The unexpected decision Sam stood in the dimly lit briefing room, his eyes fixed on the hologram of the alien princess, Zara. The image flickered in the air, displaying her captured form, shackled and surrounded by soldiers from his own unit. Her kind, the alien rulers from a distant planet, had always been enemies to humanity. The galaxy had seen nothing but war and distrust for centuries. The mission was simple: eliminate the alien threat. But as Sam stared at the princess's face, a strange feeling gnawed at him. He wasn't sure what it was: guilt, pity, or something deeper. The orders were clear, though. Leave no one alive, his commander had said. Yet something about this mission didn't sit right with him. He shifted his weight, tapping his fingers on the table as the room around him buzzed with the low hum of the bass. His comrades were ready. They were all armed, prepared for the fight. But Sam couldn't shake the image of Zara's eyes filled with fear and confusion. She wasn't a soldier. She was a royal, a prisoner of war. The decision weighed heavily on him. Sam wasn't a hero. He wasn't the kind of man who made emotional decisions. He had always followed orders, believed in duty above all. But in that moment, staring at the princess's hologram, something inside him broke. He couldn't just walk away. Not this time. His mind raced. He remembered the stories told about Zara's people, the ruthless, cunning aliens who had invaded countless worlds. They were feared, their empire stretching across galaxies. Humanity had fought back, but not without losses. The princess was part of the enemy, and killing her could finally bring an end to the war. But there was a part of Sam that couldn't see Zara as just an enemy. Something about her humanity, her pain, struck a chord with him. He had been trained to see all aliens as threats, but Zara, she wasn't like the others. She was a person who deserved a chance to live. Without thinking, Sam saw. The desert's wrathsome gripped the control panel as the ship broke through the clouds, the cold atmosphere of the planet growing distant. Below him, the vast, unforgiving desert stretched as far as the eye could see, a never-ending sea of sand. The heat from the sun scorched the barren earth, and the dry winds howled through the open valleys. It was the perfect place to hide, or the perfect place to die. The journey had been long, but there was no turning back now. Zara lay unconscious in the small medical bay of the ship, her injuries from her capture still raw. Sam's heart ached. Every time he looked at her, he had no idea how to save her, but he had to try. He couldn't shake the image of her terrified eyes, nor the guilt that gnawed at him for leaving her to suffer at the hands of the humans who were supposed to protect her. He didn't know what drove him to this point. Perhaps it was the desperation in her voice when she begged for mercy, or perhaps it was the cruelty he had seen in his own people. Either way, Sam had made his choice. He would do whatever it took to protect her, no matter the cost. The desert, however, would not make this easy. As the ship descended toward the ground, Sam's mind raced. The ground was too rough, too unpredictable. He couldn't risk crashing near a populated area. He had to find shelter, fast. He couldn't afford to be seen. He steered the ship toward an isolated canyon where the jagged rocks offered some cover. As the ship landed, the engines hummed to a stop and the doors hissed open. Sam stepped out first, his boots sinking into the hot sand as he scanned the horizon. Nothing moved, save for the occasional gust of wind stirring the dust. Zara groaned from inside the ship and Sam rushed back to her side. She stirred slightly, her pale face showing signs of exhaustion and pain. He gently lifted her, trying to be as careful as possible, and helped her to her feet. She wasn't in any condition to walk, but Sam couldn't afford to carry her for long. He needed to move quickly. They made their way out of the ship and into the canyon, where the jagged rocks loomed overhead, creating a natural path. Sam could feel the heat bearing down on him, but he knew he had to press on. There was no telling how long it would take before the human forces found them, but he wasn't about to let that stop him. They had been walking for hours when Sam first noticed it, the faint sound of engines in the distance. At first, he thought it was just his imagination playing tricks on him, but as the sound grew louder, his heart sank. Someone was coming. The human forces had found them. Sam's pulse quickened. There was no time to lose. He picked up his pace, urging Zara to keep moving, but she stumbled, her legs giving out beneath her. Sam caught her just in time, his breath ragged with fear. She was getting weaker and fast. "We have to keep going," he said, his voice strained. Zara looked up at him, her eyes filled with confusion and pain. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. Sam's grip tightened on her arm, his thoughts racing. "Because you don't deserve this. None of you do." The sound of engines grew louder. Sam could hear the hum of hovercrafts, and he knew they were closing in. He didn't have much time. "We have to hide," Sam said urgently. "We can't let them see us." There was a small cave ahead, barely visible against the rocky landscape. It was their only chance. Sam helped Zara toward it, his body tense with every step. As they reached the entrance, he pulled her inside, hiding them in the darkness. They were both gasping for breath, the oppressive heat making it hard to think. Sam pressed himself against the wall, trying to steady his pounding heart. The engines were close now. Too close. The sounds of the hovercrafts echoed through the canyon, their sleek metallic forms gliding above the sand. Sam's pulse raced. They had to wait. They had to hope the cave would be enough to hide them from their pursuers. He glanced at Zara, her fragile form curled up against the wall. She was shivering, her body barely able to hold up against the heat and exhaustion. Sam knew they couldn't stay here long, but he also knew they couldn't move just yet. They were too vulnerable. As the minutes stretched on, the sound of the engines grew louder, passing overhead. Sam's breath caught in his throat. They were so close to being discovered. He could hear the soldiers speaking in hushed tones, their voices muffled by the walls of the canyon. Sam strained to hear, hoping to pick up something that would give him an advantage, but all he could make out were their orders. They were searching for an alien princess. It wasn't just Zara they were after. It was the very hope of peace between the two species. If they captured her again, any chance of ending the war would be lost. The engines finally began to fade, and Sam allowed himself a breath of relief. But he knew they weren't safe yet. The moment they stepped out of the cave, the hunt would start again. As he glanced at Zara, he realized just how much he had put on the line. His people, his life, it didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was getting her to safety. The road ahead would be dangerous, but Sam was willing to face whatever came next. He helped Zara to her feet once more, his voice steady as he whispered, "We're not done yet." And with that, they stepped back into the desert, where the wrath of the world awaited them. Aimed his fist onto the table, making the room fall silent. The commander looked at him, a sharp, questioning glance. "Sam, are you okay?" His voice was firm but filled with concern. I can't do it," Sam said, his voice quiet but resolute. His decision was made. "What are you talking about?" the commander asked, clearly confused. "I'm not going to kill her," Sam said, his words hanging in the air. The silence in the room deepened. "I'm going to save her." There was a long pause. The commander stared at him, disbelief written all over his face. "You're making a huge mistake, Sam," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "We've fought too long to let one alien princess change that. She's a symbol of everything we're fighting against. She's also a person," Sam replied, his voice unwavering. "And she doesn't deserve to die." The commander's expression darkened. "So what now? You're going to disobey orders? Do you know what this will mean for you, for your future? You'll be branded a traitor, Sam." Sam met his gaze. "I'd rather be a traitor than a killer." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He knew he was making the wrong choice in the eyes of his comrades, but it felt like the right choice deep down. He couldn't stand by and let this innocent person die just because of a war she had no part in. As Sam made his way to the hangar, where the ship was waiting to take him to the alien prison camp, his thoughts were a whirlwind. He wasn't sure how he would pull this off. He wasn't even sure if he could save her. But he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her there. He boarded the ship, his heart pounding in his chest. The familiar hum of the engines filled the cabin, but his mind was elsewhere. This wasn't just a rescue mission, it was a test. A test of his morals, his beliefs, and his loyalty. But most of all, it was a test of his humanity. As the ship lifted off the ground, Sam glanced at the view ahead. The stars twinkled in the distance, endless and far away. The journey ahead would be dangerous. He would be hunted. There would be no going back. But for the first time, Sam felt like he was doing the right thing. He only hoped that by the end of this, he wouldn't lose everything he believed in. The hidden valley Sam's feet were raw from the desert's unforgiving terrain. The heat of the sun was relentless, and his mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. How much longer could they keep running? How much longer could he protect Zara? She was growing weaker with every step, and he knew they were both running out of time. The canyon they had sought refuge in had offered them some shelter, but the soldiers would be back. They always came back. Sam had no illusions that they were safe here for long. But as they moved further into the rocky gorge, something unexpected caught his eye. An entrance, hidden behind a massive rock formation. It was a narrow path, barely visible unless you knew where to look. "We need to go. There," Sam muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. The fear that had gripped him ever since he made the decision to rescue Zara only intensified. But this path hidden in the shadows might offer them a chance to regroup, to find some shelter from the storm that was closing in. Zara didn't respond. She was too weak to protest, but Sam could see the doubt in her eyes. She didn't trust him, not yet. She couldn't, not after everything that had happened. But he wasn't about to leave her behind, not now. With one last effort, Sam helped her through the narrow path. The way was rocky, and the sand was thick beneath their feet, but they pushed forward. The air grew cooler as they descended deeper into the hidden valley, its walls rising up on either side like ancient sentinels. The valley was surrounded by jagged cliffs that seemed to block out the rest of the world, offering them some kind of strange isolation. As they reached the heart of the valley, Sam couldn't help but feel a strange sense of unease. It was too quiet, too perfect. The lush vegetation seemed out of place in such a harsh, unforgiving desert. Flowers bloomed in colors he had never seen before, their petals glowing softly in the twilight. The trees stood tall and proud, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. It was beautiful, but Sam knew better than to trust something that seemed too perfect. The serenity of the valley was unsettling. There was something wrong here, something hidden beneath the surface. "We should rest here," Sam said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. But Zara only shook her head weakly. "No. Something's wrong," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Sam glanced at her, confused. He had thought she was too weak to say anything, but now her gaze was sharp. She was looking around, her eyes scanning the valley, with a wariness that sent a chill down Sam's spine. "What do you mean?" he asked, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. The peaceful surroundings were now more suspicious than comforting. "This place, it's too quiet," Zara said, her voice trembling. "This valley, it's a trap." Sam's stomach sank. He had felt it too. The odd sense of calm, the unnatural stillness in the air. It wasn't right. The valley was beautiful, but the beauty didn't mask the danger lurking beneath. Before Sam could respond, a low rumble echoed through the valley. It was so faint at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew louder with each passing second. Sam's heart skipped a beat. It was the sound of something massive, something alive. "We need to move," Sam said urgently, grabbing Zara's arm. But before they could retreat, the ground beneath them trembled. The rumbling grew into a deafening roar, and suddenly, the ground split open with a violent force. From the depths of the earth, massive stone creatures began to rise. Beasts, unlike anything Sam had ever seen before. Their bodies were made of living rock with glowing veins of energy pulsing through their massive limbs. Their eyes were fiery and bright, focused on Sam and Zara like predators stalking their prey. Sam's pulse raced as he drew his weapon, but he knew it would be useless. These creatures were beyond anything he could fight. They were the guardians of the valley, ancient protectors of a place that should have never been disturbed. "We have to run," Sam shouted, pulling Zara with him as they sprinted toward the narrow path they had entered through. But the stone beasts were fast. Too fast. They lumbered after them, their heavy steps shaking the ground beneath their feet. The air was thick with dust, and Sam could barely see through the storm of debris that the creatures kicked up. His heart pounded in his chest as he pushed Zara forward, his mind screaming at him to find a way out. But the valley had turned into a maze of rocks and dead ends, each turn leading them deeper into danger. They stumbled across a large cliff face, the stone rising high above them. The creatures were closing in. There was no way forward, no way out. Sam could feel the heat rising in his chest. He had failed. He had brought Zara into this, and now they were both going to die here, buried beneath the earth and the monsters that had been awakened. But as he turned to face the oncoming beasts, he caught a glimpse of something, an opening, high in the cliff face. It was a narrow ledge, too high to reach by normal means, but it was their only hope. "Zara!" Sam shouted, his voice desperate. "Climb!" He didn't wait for her response. He reached for the jagged rocks above and began to climb, his fingers scraping against the rough surface. Behind him, he could hear the creatures closing in, their growls reverberating in the valley. Zara's breath was labored, but she was right behind him, pushing herself to climb despite her weakness. Every move was a struggle, but they had no choice. The only thing standing between them and certain death was that ledge. Sam reached the top first, pulling himself up with one final surge of strength. He reached down and grabbed Zara's arm, pulling her up just as the first of the stone beasts slammed into the cliff face below them. They collapsed onto the ledge, panting for breath. The valley below them was silent once again. But Sam knew this wasn't over. They had escaped for now, but the danger was far from gone. "This place. It's cursed," Zara whispered, her voice trembling. "And we're not the only ones trapped here." Sam's eyes darted around, the realization sinking in. They were far from safe. The betrayal, the ledge was narrow, too narrow for comfort. Sam and Zara had managed to escape the stone beast, but the relief was short-lived. The dark skies overhead seemed to close in on them, and the silence that followed the chaos was deafening. Zara's breathing was ragged, each inhale a painful reminder of the toll the desert and the valley had taken on her. Sam's own body ached from the climb, his hands raw and covered in cuts. But it wasn't the physical exhaustion that weighed on him now. It was the feeling that they were running. Out of time, running out of luck. Zara sat against the rocky wall, her eyes distant, lost in thought. She had never trusted Sam, and for good reason. Humans had long been their enemies, and Sam was no different from the others. Yet, she had survived because of him, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she was beginning to believe there was something different about him. "We can't stay here long," Sam muttered, scanning the valley below them. The stone beasts were still below, but for now, they seemed content to stay within the valley's walls. It was a temporary reprieve. He knew the danger wasn't over. "Where do we go from here?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. She looked up at Sam, her eyes filled with questions, but also fear. She had never expected to be saved by a human. She had never expected to trust one. Sam hesitated. He didn't know the answer. His mind raced, trying to figure out where to go next. There had to be an escape, a way to get Zara back to safety. But the valley was treacherous, and he wasn't sure how long they could last on their own. He needed help. He needed someone to guide them through this madness. "There's a settlement," Sam said finally, his voice steady but unsure. "We'll head there, maybe find allies. Maybe someone can help us." Zara's gaze sharpened, but her expression remained guarded. "A settlement?" she asked, skepticism lacing her voice. "Who would help a human and an alien princess? Your people would kill you both on sight." Sam's throat tightened at the thought. She was right. The human military would stop at nothing to hunt him down. He had already betrayed them by saving her. If they found him, he'd be marked as a traitor. But there was no turning back now. "I know it's a risk," Sam admitted, his voice low. But it's our only option. We can't stay here forever. Zara remained silent, her eyes flickering with indecision. Then, as if deciding something in her mind, she nodded. I trust you, she said, surprising Sam. She had been distant, almost cold since they first met, but her words were different now. It wasn't just survival that kept them together. Something deeper had begun to grow between them, a fragile, uneasy trust. Sam helped Zara to her feet, and together they began the difficult descent from the ledge. The valley stretched out before them, its beauty still masking the danger it held. They made their way toward the settlement, the path fraught with risk at every turn. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on them. As they traveled through the valley, Sam kept his guard up, his instincts screaming that they weren't alone. The air felt too still, and the shadows seemed to move in ways that didn't make sense. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Then, just as they rounded a bend in the valley, Sam froze. Standing ahead of them, just beyond the rocks, was a figure, a familiar figure. Sam's heart skipped a beat. It was Lucas, his old comrade from the military. Sam, Lucas called out, his voice filled with both relief and something darker, something hidden. I knew I'd find you here. Zara stiffened beside him, her expression guarded. Sam's mind raced, but he kept his composure. Lucas was a friend, or at least he had been. They had fought side by side in many battles, and Sam trusted him. But now, standing face to face with him in this desolate valley, that trust felt misplaced. Something about the situation didn't sit right. What are you doing here? Sam asked, trying to keep his voice steady. His hand instinctively rested on the hilt of his weapon. Lucas raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a knowing smile. I came for you, Sam, he said, stepping forward. The higher-ups were starting to get worried. Thought you might be in over your head. And it looks like you are. Sam's grip tightened. You know why we're here. You know what's at stake. Oh, I know, Lucas replied, his tone suddenly colder. That's why I'm here to help you, Sam. You don't have to keep running. I'm here to bring you back to the fold. Sam's stomach churned. It was the moment he had feared. The betrayal he had sensed earlier. The one that had lingered like a shadow in the back of his mind. It was now clear. Lucas wasn't here to help. He was here to capture him, to take him back and force him to answer for his disobedience. No, Sam said, stepping back. I won't go back. I'm not going to let you take her. Lucas's eyes hardened, and a dangerous edge crept into his voice. You've already made your choice, Sam, and now you'll pay for it. Before Sam could react, Lucas raised his weapon, and in that moment, everything happened in a blur. The sound of gunfire echoed through the valley as Lucas fired, and Sam ducked instinctively, pulling Zara out of the line of fire. The bullet missed, but it was a warning shot. Sam knew that Lucas wasn't going to stop until one of them was dead. You don't have to do this, Sam shouted, trying to reason with his old friend. This isn't you. You don't have to follow these orders. We can still end this war. Lucas's smile twisted into something cruel. It's too late for that, Sam. You made your choice, and now we'll see how it ends. Sam's heart pounded in his chest. Lucas had always been loyal, but now his loyalty had turned into something darker, something cold and calculating. It was no longer about saving Zara. It was about survival. And in this moment, Sam realized just how far he was willing to go to protect her, and how much he had to lose. Zara's voice broke through his thoughts, quiet but urgent. Sam, we can't stay here. We need to move. He turned to her, his mind racing. There was no time to fight Lucas. Not here, not now. They had to escape, before it was too late. With one final glance at Lucas, Sam turned and pulled Zara into the rocks, desperate to find an escape route, but Lucas wasn't far behind. The final push, the rocky terrain beneath Sam's boots seemed to shift with every step, the ground loose and unstable. His muscles screamed in protest as he carried Zara, who was barely conscious, in his arms. Each moment felt like it could be their last, and he couldn't afford to slow down. Lucas was hunting them, Sam knew that now. Betrayal ran deeper than just orders. It was personal. They had made it out of the narrow pass where Lucas had ambushed them, but the escape had come at a cost. Zara's condition had worsened. The injuries she'd sustained from her capture, combined with the strain of their journey, were taking a toll. Sam could feel her breathing, shallow and erratic, and he had no idea how much longer she could hang on. Every step forward was a fight, not just against the desert, but against time itself. They had to find shelter. But where? The vastness of the valley stretched before them, every path seeming the same as the one before. Sam felt trapped in a maze of rocks and sand. The wind picked up, swirling around them like a harsh whisper, carrying the scent of the desert's secrets. Sam's thoughts were racing. The settlement, the one he had been hoping to reach, was still miles away. Miles that felt like an eternity, in the brutal desert heat. Every minute was a risk, and with every mile they were closer to being caught. Sam had no illusion about what would happen if Lucas or the military found them first. Death, or worse, a fate worse than death. Just a little further, Sam muttered to himself, though his own voice felt hollow in the vast emptiness. We can make it. Just a little longer. Zara's head lolled against his chest, her body trembling. Her once strong demeanor was slipping away with every passing moment. It was clear she had little fight left in her. Sam's heart twisted in his chest. He couldn't let her die. He couldn't let her down. Suddenly, the sound of engines cut through the silence. Like a blade, Sam froze. The low hum of hovercrafts, unmistakable, getting closer. They were out of time. He quickly looked around, his heart pounding in his throat. To the left, the canyon walls narrowed into a small crevice, a potential hiding spot. But there was no way it would be enough to hide them from the hovercrafts. Sam's eyes darted back to the open path ahead of him, but all he saw was the relentless stretch of sand and rock. Then, something caught his eye. Off to the right, barely visible, was a narrow passage hidden among the rocks leading into a dense cluster of shrubs. It wasn't much, but it was their best shot. The engines were growing louder, and they were almost upon them. Without hesitation, Sam veered toward the passage, his breath coming in short bursts as he half-carried, half-dragged Zara toward the only cover they had. The passage was tight, the rocks pressing in from all sides, but it offered them a brief moment of safety. Sam could hear the faint sound of the hovercrafts above, and his heart raced as the shadows passed overhead. They had just made it in time. The narrow tunnel wound deeper into the rocks, the light growing dimmer as they moved farther inside. Sam could feel Zara's body growing heavier in his arms, her breaths shallow and labored. He didn't know how much longer she had. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Please, Sam whispered under his breath, his voice shaking. Please don't give up. Zara stirred slightly, her eyes flickering open. She looked at him with a mixture of confusion and fear, but also something else, something fragile, like she was seeing him for the first time. For a brief moment, Sam felt something shift between them, an understanding, a bond. We'll make it, Sam promised, though he wasn't sure if he was convincing her or himself. Just as they reached the end of the tunnel, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from behind them. Sam froze, his heart hammering in his chest. They weren't alone. Someone or something was coming for them. Get down, Sam hissed, lowering Zara to the ground and pressing his body against the cold stone. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Sam's grip tightened on his weapon, though he knew it might not be enough. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form tall and imposing. Sam's heart skipped a beat as he recognized the silhouette. It was Lucas, and he wasn't alone. You're making a mistake, Sam. Lucas's voice echoed through the narrow passage, cold and filled with warning. There's nowhere to run, now. Sam's breath caught in his throat. Lucas had found them, and this time, there would be no escaping. Zara's hand twitched in Sam's grip, and for a moment, Sam thought he had failed. He had failed to keep her safe, but then she spoke, her voice weak but steady. Leave us alone, Zara said, her words carrying a weight Sam had never heard before. "You don't understand. You never did." Lucas paused, clearly taken aback by her words. Sam's heart raced, hoping against hope that she had some plan, some secret that could save them. But Lucas's laugh cut through the tension, cruel and unforgiving. "You think you can talk your way out of this?" Lucas sneered. "It's over, Sam. It's over." But Zara wasn't done. Her voice grew stronger, more defiant. "This war, this destruction, and it was never meant to be. The humans, the aliens. We were all deceived. And now, you're just a puppet, controlled by the same forces you claim to fight against." Sam's eyes widened. He had never heard Zara speak like this before. There was a strength in her words that sent a shiver down his spine. She wasn't just an alien princess anymore. She was a leader, someone who understood the stakes of the war more than Sam had ever realized. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, his expression faltering for just a moment. Sam seized the opportunity. "We don't have to do this," Sam said, his voice firm. "We can still stop this. We can still save both our kinds." Lucas's eyes narrowed, the gleam of uncertainty flickering behind his cold demeanor. For a brief moment, Sam saw a crack in his old friend's resolve, but it didn't last. Lucas raised his weapon, his expression hardening. "You made your choice, Sam," he said, voice steely. "Now I make mine." But before Lucas could fire, Zara moved. Faster than Sam had anticipated, she pushed herself to her feet with a strength that stunned him. She raised her hand and, suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake. A low hum vibrated through the air, and Sam's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. Zara was using her powers. The earth cracked, sending rocks tumbling in all directions. Lucas staggered back, his weapon slipping from his hands. Sam watched in awe as Zara's energy pulsed through the passage, creating a barrier of pure force. "Leave us alone," Zara commanded, her voice fierce and commanding, her eyes glowing with power. Sam's heart raced, his body still tense with the danger that surrounded them. But in that moment he realized, this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about the future of both their kinds. And somehow, with Zara's strength and Sam's determination, they had a chance. The unthinkable, the air felt thick, almost suffocating, as Sam and Zara stood together, barely able to catch their breath. The chaos of the valley was behind them now, and the ominous quiet that followed left them feeling exposed. They had survived Lucas's betrayal, but the cost was becoming more apparent with every passing moment. Zara's strength was fading, and Sam could feel it. She had given everything to protect them, to stand her ground, but her body was no longer responding. Her breath came in shallow, painful gasps as she clung to Sam's side. Sam couldn't afford to be weak. Not now. Not when they were so close. The settlement, the place they had been heading toward for so long, was still within reach. But it wasn't a guarantee of safety. The dangers they had faced so far paled in comparison to what awaited them. And now, with Lucas's betrayal still fresh in his mind, Sam couldn't shake the thought that they weren't safe yet. Not even in the settlement. They moved forward through the dense woods, the trees thick with foliage and the air heavy with moisture. Sam could feel the ground shifting beneath his feet, the remnants of the storm that had raged earlier leaving the path slippery and dangerous. Each step felt like it might be their last, but he pushed on, driven by one simple thought. Get Zara to safety. As they neared the edge of the woods, the distant sounds of civilization became clearer. The settlement was close. Sam's heart beat faster, hope flickering inside him. He knew that the settlement wasn't just a place of refuge. It was their only chance for survival. But would it be enough? Would the people there accept them, or would they be just another set of strangers to be hunted down? Zara's voice broke through his thoughts, weak but steady. "Sam, do you think they'll help us?" Sam glanced at her, her face pale, her once strong will now overshadowed by exhaustion. The princess, the symbol of alien power, was a shadow of herself. Her strength had come from her people, but now, it was only her resolve that kept her moving forward. "They have to," Sam said, though the uncertainty in his own voice betrayed him. They'll have no choice. We can't keep running forever. But, as the settlement came into view, something felt wrong. Sam's instincts kicked in, his military training warning him that things were not as they seemed. The settlement was too quiet. There were no signs of life, no movement, no sound of people going about their business. It was an eerie calm, like a predator watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Stay close," Sam whispered to Zara, his grip tightening around her waist as they walked toward the settlement. "We need to find answers." They reached the outskirts, where the first signs of life were just starting to emerge. The settlement was built on a steep hill, with houses made from a strange, unfamiliar material that shimmered in the dim light. The narrow streets were lined with stone walls, and though the buildings appeared intact, there was a distinct sense of abandonment in the air. No one was in sight. Sam led Zara into the center of the settlement, every nerve on edge. He half expected the settlement to be deserted, but the strange thing was that it didn't seem abandoned. It seemed empty, like something had driven everyone away, yet nothing had been touched. As they ventured deeper into the settlement, Sam noticed something unsettling. A flicker of movement out of the corner of his eye, a shadow fast and fleeting. He whipped his head around, but there was nothing. Nothing but the empty streets, the abandoned buildings. The air was thick with tension, and Sam felt like they were walking into a trap. "We're being watched," Sam muttered, his voice low and tense. Zara's eyes widened. She too had sensed it, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. "Do you think they know we're here?" Sam didn't respond immediately. He wasn't sure, but the feeling of being watched was growing stronger, and it was only a matter of time before they were discovered. He needed to make a decision now. "We have to find shelter," Sam said, his voice firm. "We can't stay out in the open. We have to keep moving." They continued through the streets, Sam's senses heightened with every step. It felt like the settlement was alive, but not with people, something else. Something darker. The quiet, oppressive atmosphere weighed on them as they passed by one building after another. Finally, Sam spotted what he was looking for. An old abandoned building at the far end of the settlement, hidden behind a wall of overgrown vines. It seemed like the perfect place to hide, if only for a moment. "This way," Sam whispered, urging Zara forward. They entered the building cautiously, and the moment they were inside, the door slammed shut behind them, sending a shock of adrenaline through Sam's body. He spun around, expecting an ambush, but there was nothing. The building was dark, its windows boarded up, but it offered some semblance of shelter. As Sam took a step further into the room, his foot hit something soft. He crouched down, his heart pounding in his chest, and picked up a small weathered object. It was a piece of fabric, torn and stained, with an intricate pattern woven into the fabric. It was alien, definitely not human. "What is it?" Zara asked, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," Sam said, his mind racing. "But this doesn't belong here." Before he could say more, a loud crash echoed through the room. Sam whipped around, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, silhouetted against the dim light. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was cold, filled with malice. "This is where it all ends." Sam's pulse spiked. The voice was familiar, too familiar. He stepped back, his mind reeling, trying to place it. Then as the figure stepped into the light, Sam's heart sank. It was Lucas, the man who had betrayed him. The man who had once been his brother in arms was now standing before him, a twisted smile on his face. And behind him, a group of soldiers emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on Sam and Zara. "You thought you could run," Lucas sneered. "But you're in my world now." Sam's grip tightened on his weapon, his entire body tense. This was it. The final confrontation. They had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. "This ends now, Sam," Lucas said, stepping closer, his voice colder than ice. It was never about saving her. It was always about control. Sam's mind raced. He knew this wasn't just about Zara. It was bigger than that. much bigger. And in that moment, he realized the truth. Lucas was not just an enemy. He was part of a far-reaching conspiracy, one that threatened not just Zara, but the future of both their worlds. Sam had a choice to make: fight back or surrender. And whatever choice he made, the consequences would be irreversible. "You've already lost," Lucas whispered, a dark satisfaction in his eyes. The battle for survival had just become a war for the future. A new dawn. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating as Sam and Zara stood facing Lucas and the soldiers. The oppressive silence that had fallen over the room was broken only by the sound of their shallow breaths. Sam's heart pounded in his chest as he felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was it, the final confrontation. There was no going back. The choice was clear: fight or give in. Lucas stood in front of them, a twisted smile on his face. His posture was relaxed, as if he had already won. His soldiers flanked him, weapons drawn, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Sam could feel the heat of the situation in his bones. But as he glanced at Zara, her eyes locked on him with an intensity that both frightened and gave him strength. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something greater. It was about the future of their worlds, and the decision they made today would determine whether there was any hope left. Zara stepped forward, her body trembling, but her eyes burning with an inner fire. Sam could feel the strength radiating from her even as she struggled to stay on her feet. She had been through so much already, and yet she was still standing, still fighting. "Lucas," she said, her voice steady but filled with a quiet fury. "This isn't just about power. You've lost your way." Lucas's smile faltered for a brief moment, and for the first time, Sam saw a flicker of uncertainty in his old comrade's eyes. It was like a crack in the armor, and Sam knew that they still had a chance to turn this around. "You think you can talk your way out of this, Zara?" Lucas sneered. "This is bigger than you, bigger than Sam. You're nothing but pawns in a game you don't understand." "You're wrong," Zara replied, her voice gaining strength. "The game you're playing is the one that will destroy us all. It's not too late to stop." Sam felt a surge of hope as he looked at her words stirring something inside him. He knew that she was right. This wasn't just about one battle, one victory. This was about the future of humanity and the alien races, and whether they could coexist or be torn apart by the very people who claimed to protect them. "Sam, get ready," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is our last chance." Sam nodded, his grip tightening around the weapon in his hand. He didn't know what was coming next, but he was ready to do whatever it took to protect Zara, and to stop Lucas from destroying everything they had fought for. He could feel the shift in the air, the anticipation of the final moments. It was all or nothing. The soldiers behind Lucas moved slightly, their weapons trained on Sam and Zara, waiting for the signal. Lucas stepped forward, his hand raised as if to give them the order. But then he stopped. He glanced around the room, his eyes narrowing as he seemed to sense something was wrong. For a moment, everything was still. Then a loud rumble shook the ground beneath them. Sam's heart skipped a beat as the building around them trembled. Cracks appeared in the walls, and the floor beneath their feet groaned with the weight of something massive. The soldiers looked around, confused and startled. Lucas's eyes darted to the ceiling, then to the walls, as the ground continued to shake. Before anyone could react, the entire building began to collapse. "Get out," Lucas shouted, his voice filled with panic. "It's too late." The walls cracked open, debris falling in all directions. Sam grabbed Zara, pulling her away from the chaos as the floor buckled beneath them. They barely managed to avoid being crushed by a falling beam, and Sam's heart raced as he dragged Zara toward the only exit he could see. The soldiers were scrambling, trying to escape the collapsing structure, but Lucas seemed frozen in place, unable to act. "Lucas!" Sam shouted. But the sound of the collapse drowned out his voice. Zara's body was shaking in his arms, her strength failing her. "We can't stop it," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. But Sam didn't stop. He couldn't. There was no time for doubt. He pulled her through the wreckage, narrowly avoiding falling debris as the settlement crumbled around them. The air was thick with dust and the noise of the destruction was deafening. Everything they had fought for, everything they had hoped to protect was coming down in ruins. They reached the entrance of the building just as the last of the walls collapsed, sending a cloud of dust and debris flying into the air. Sam and Zara stumbled outside, gasping for air, their bodies covered in dust and blood. They looked back at the settlement as the smoke rose into the sky, a testament to everything that had been lost. But the battle wasn't over. Lucas and the soldiers weren't far behind. Sam glanced at Zara, her eyes now filled with something new. Determination. She might be weak, but the fire in her spirit had never been stronger. "We need to move," she said, her voice steadier. "Now. This isn't over." They stumbled forward, moving through the wreckage of the settlement as the last remnants of Lucas's army tried to regroup. But Sam knew that the tide was shifting. The destruction of the settlement was only the beginning. The world, their world, was changing and there was no going back. As they reached a clearing, Sam's eyes fell on something in the distance. A ship, waiting for them. It wasn't the military. It was something different. Something unexpected. A small group of rebels, those who had long been fighting against the forces Lucas had allied with, had come to their aid. "You made it," one of them said, his voice filled with both relief and determination. Sam didn't speak. He could barely find the words. All he could do was nod as he helped Zara aboard the ship. They were alive. They had survived, but the real battle was just beginning. "Let's go," Sam said, looking at the horizon as the ship took off, leaving the ruins of the settlement behind them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Sam believed there was hope. Hope for peace. Hope for a new beginning. And as the ship soared into the sky, Sam and Zara knew that their journey wasn't over. It was just beginning.